So, Matt Continetti, aside from baseball talk, you've read the transcript. What did you take away from Vice President Vance's conversation about the Pope, Iran, China, anything?
Well, Hugh, I thought it was a very open interview. I thought the vice president came across as very relaxed. You could tell, I think, the intensity of his faith, of his Catholicism, his willingness to really get into details about the new Pope, his reaction to it, what his hopes for are. And you saw there, of course, in that last question on Iran, the vice president saying that there's no daylight between him and President Trump on the issue of the Iranian nuclear program and Iran's ability to obtain a nuclear weapon. I thought the president, in your interview with President Trump earlier this week, put it very well. He said to the Iranians, talking to Hugh, blow them up nicely, or we'll blow them up viciously. And I think that captures the Trump doctrine in one totally unique phrase, as we're used to from the president.
Now, I do know, because I talked to J-Pod about this, John Podhoretz, he still worries. Do you run into people who still worry that somehow we'll end up with the son of JCPOA?
Well, you always have that fear in the back of your mind. But I'd say that in the past week or so, the consistency of the president's message, not just of the past week, but when you consider that he has been saying the same thing since he entered the presidential arena in 2015, that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, that the Obama nuclear deal was the worst deal in history, that he's proud that he removed the United States from that deal in 2018. And then again and again and again, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And of course, President Trump has also said in several interviews in recent weeks that he doesn't see why the Iranians should have a civil nuclear program. He doesn't understand why the Iranians sitting on this oil field, gas fields. They have more than enough oil and gas to supply their own energy needs. There's really no reason to have a civilian nuclear program, to President Trump's mind. And he even said, what starts out as a civilian program often ends up as a military program. So I think in his eagerness to solve this peacefully, he has drawn a red line around the idea of enrichment. No enrichment. If they want to have a civilian nuclear program at the Isfahan site, which is the site that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff specifically mentioned today in his interview with Breitbart.com, they're going to have to get the uranium processed from outside the country.
I'm going to be talking with Matt Continetti during the break, and then bring him back on the other side, is our practice. Make sure you follow him on X at Continetti. Make sure you also read him in the Free Press. During the break, I'm going to talk to him about his Free Press interview or assessment of President Trump's commencement speech. So make sure you listen later on YouTube to the whole interview. Stay tuned. So I'm back with Matt Continetti of the American Enterprise Institute commentary in the Free Press. Matt, you're a great guy. Donald Trump told me that this week when I brought up your commencement speech analysis. So you're a great guy. I hope you get to sit down with him and talk with him at length. Tell me what the reaction among your friends was to your laudatory column on a very good speech, and I thought you came at it the right way. I thought it was an excellent column.
Well, thank you, Hugh. I appreciate that. And of course, I really appreciate the president's words to you in your interview with him earlier this week. Look, Trump doesn't get, I think, the attention he deserves. Now, it's very odd to say that, right? He's the most famous person in the world, the most powerful person in the world for about 10 years now. But so often our media just simply cover what they're used to covering, the political messaging, the ad libs, the jokes. That's what they care about. That's what outrages their audience. And so that's what they pay attention to. And what I found at this commencement speech was that was only half the story. The rest of the speech were these 10 pieces of advice that Donald Trump was giving the graduates. And what I found most interesting about these pieces of advice was what they revealed about Trump himself, how he thinks, the people that mattered to him, the examples that he follows in his life. And so I try to lay them out in this column at the Free Press, go through all 10 and talk about how combined, when you look at them, you get a portrait of Donald Trump who is, love him or hate him, and people feel both ways, but he is undeniably an American original, and I think will be treated as such in the history books.
Of the 10 points, I thought the most important was don't lose your momentum. What did you think was the pyramid of points among the 10?
Yeah, I thought that momentum one was very interesting as well. He used specifically a story of his encounters with William Levitt, the famous developer of the Levitt towns, the really kind of the main driver of suburbanization in America after the Second World War. And the president described meeting him at a party late in Levitt's life, and Levitt saying that I had lost my momentum and my career never recovered. And when I heard that story and the president telling it, I said, well, this explains why he just doesn't stop. He's never stopped. I mean, even from when he was criticizing Obama in Obama's first term and flirting with the idea of running for president in 2012, it has been nonstop ever since. And I think that fear that of winding up like Levitt, having years of your life left where you're still not making a difference and being the center of attention, does drive the president to just go full charge. When you consider all of the crises that he's dealing with at any given moment, and he doesn't really flag. There's so many balls up in the air, right? I mean, he's an expert juggler, but I think it comes from that idea that you just can't stop going until you absolutely have to. He even coined a phrase. He goes, I call it momentum time, is what he says. And at some point you lose your momentum, but the momentum time is something Trump cares about a lot, and he's definitely not losing his right now.
I'm coming right back with Matt Continetti. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Yesterday really was a very, very significant day. Matt Continetti, my guest from AEI, the Free Press and Commentary magazine and podcast, because we've had popes for 2,000 years. The only institution older than that I'm aware of is Judaism. And so Christianity goes back a long way, and the Catholic Church goes back a long way. And now we have an American Pope. And the significance of that's going to take a while for me to get my arms around as a Catholic. You're not a Catholic. What do you think of it?
Well, I think it's amazing. I think it's something that most of us thought we would never see in history, an American Pope. And Pope Leo is unique. I mean, he's born and raised in America. He went to Villanova. He spent a lot of his life in Peru. And of course, interestingly enough, in his opening message after his election yesterday, he did not speak English, though I noticed that he opened his homily, his first homily as Pope this morning, with an English paragraph. It's going to be really fun to watch. I mean, I'm just excited for when he visits the United States and goes to Chicago. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it's going to be a huge event. Also, the age of the Pope. You know, he's 69 years old, which gives him potentially decades to influence the church, influence the world. And I've been struck, Hugh, as well. I think there's a great sense of kind of optimism about this Pope. You know, we immediately rush to get our partisan bearings and try to interpret this office, which kind of transcends domestic politics and American politics into a blue-red paradigm. But I think there are people, no matter where you stand within Catholicism on some of these questions, you can see Pope Leo as a potential bridge builder, or someone who at least is not, I think, aiming toward stirring up strife within the church. That may be one reason why he was elected so quickly. I mean, it's pretty incredible. The fourth ballot, really the second day of the conclave, they settled on this man who it was just, I was watching live as the president was when he was announced, and just to see the crowd, it was extremely moving. Just a great day, I think.
I think there has been a piece written about how extraordinary it will be to have a president who knows his English like you know English and I know English, speaking to American Catholicism, which as a Catholic I can say is very divided, but not along red and blue lines, but along traditionalist, reformist, progressive lines. And there's a lot of mix in there, and it's very hard to diagram it. But I can understand an American Pope, even if he's been 20 years in Peru and 10 years in the Vatican, I'll understand him, and I'll know what point. In fact, he'll be able to be subtle with us. And I don't know if you follow consistories. That's when you elevate people to the red hat, the cardinal. And that's been the real burr under my saddle. Francis passed over Archbishop Gomez, Archbishop Chaput, traditionalists who ought to traditionally have received a red hat. And it just made, they were Opus Dei or conservative, Opus Dei in the case of Gomez and just center right in the case of Chaput. But I don't know, I'm hopeful. And I don't know any Catholic I've talked to who isn't.
Yeah. No, and like I said, that's what really strikes me. I think there are a few things to look for. One is, his attitude toward the traditional rite, the Latin Mass. Is he going to be more accepting of it than his predecessor was? I think China is another issue we should pay attention to. Is he going to allow the CCP to continue to play an intrusive role in the church in China? Is he going to speak out for religious freedom in China? And then, yeah, I think there's this question of, is he going to continue kind of the bureaucratic processes that Francis began that kind of lead to internal divisions on the church? I don't know. I think it was really striking. He chose his name, Leo XIV. Leo XIII was a pope who actually had a lot to offer for both the left and the right at the time. He was a traditionalist in many ways, but he was also a social critic of some of the effects of capitalism, but he was also very anti-socialist. And I thought that name means a lot. I also thought it was significant, as some observers pointed out, that when he appeared on the balcony, he appeared in the more traditional dress, which Francis did not do. I also think
one of the American Cardinals, one of the American Cardinals today, I can't remember which one, said Leo the Great's another Leo, and the Vatican was in total disrepair when he took over. There are questions about the fiscal stability of the Vatican. Now, the church will never be bankrupt, but they're not going to sell the Sistine Chapel. They really are upside down and opaque. That he might just be the brain they needed to come in and bring some modernity to their books.
Yeah, that was another word that I heard tossed around a lot as people were talking about the new Pope Leo. They mentioned that he was a great administrator, and I think that's something that the church needs. Francis was someone who was he wanted to be among people. He cared very much about the poor, but he was also, in a way, no pun intended, a pontificator, right? He liked to kind of say what he thought about what was going on in the world, and he commented on politics and his own role. And that may have created some of these more administrative difficulties, or allowed these administrative difficulties to worsen over his 12 years as Pope. And so Leo has a great opportunity here to kind of, I think, if what I'm hearing is correct, really be an administrator, really get some of these things in order.
It's such a big organization. The vice president alluded to this. It's everywhere on the globe. It's persecuted in some places like Nigeria and China. In other places, it's divided along traditionalist, progressive lines, and in other places, it's doing just fine. But what the vice president responded to my comment, nobody really knows in the pews who's thinking what. It's the silliest attempt. The American media today immediately began asking about Trump. 30 seconds to our break. Are they always going to do that? Like 20 years from now, do you expect the American media to be asking people about Trump, Matt?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I do, Hugh. And that's why we need to find good alternative media sources, other media sources that actually have their heads straight and don't reduce every single thing to Donald John Trump.
This is 1 minute to the break. That's why I love Commentary Pod. It's also why I love the free press. Is the free press going to take over media? I mean, there'll be niches, but it's really growing fast.
It's expanding. It's a great publication to be a part of. I think it offers a lot of different things for readers: culture, hot takes, what's in the news, politics, and it does so with a viewpoint diversity, which is always important in a publication. Yes. You get a range of views and a sense of humor. That's always what I look for.
I'm coming right back with Matt Continetti during the break. I want to ask him about Cardinal Sarah's very bleak view of the West. And he's got to do it in 3 minutes because that's what I've got. But I don't know if he's ever heard of Cardinal Sarah. I will find out. Stay tuned. I'm back for a final segment with Matt Continetti. Matt, I'm holding up my iPhone, which has on it the book that I'm listening to, The Day Is Now Far Spent by Robert Cardinal Sarah, who is a senior African cardinal. And it's quite bleak about everything that's wrong with the West. Its emptiness, its loss of sense of history, its willingness to allow people from Africa to make this journey, the failure to stop it's really one of the bleakest things ever about the West. Have you ever heard of him or understood this critique?
Oh, yeah. I've heard of Cardinal Sarah for many years. He's very conservative, which I like. And I am familiar with that broader critique about the problems of the West and Western civilization. And I agree with much of it. There is a paradox, Hugh, though, that, as many problems that the West has, it seems like most people want to get here, right? I mean, we had to deal with this open border and this illegal immigration crisis because despite all of our problems in the United States, there's just a desire to be part of Western civilization, part of the project. So what does that mean? I mean, I think it means that we have to, one, address our public policy problems, but the other part is we have to recapture kind of what made our civilization great. That means reinvigorating our traditions, being proud of them, having a sense of inheritance, and not being willing to apologize for it. And I also think it means that, you know, those more traditional social structures, like the family in particular, or like the church, like your local community, they really need to be strengthened. And we need to think of ways in which we can help them, because those are the institutions that are going to reinvigorate our society, our civilization, and I think maybe allay some of the cardinals' very real concerns.
Last quick. Cardinal Sarah thinks Africa is being emptied on a false hope for the people who are leaving, the talented people who are trying to get to Europe. He's mostly concerned with Europe, and that Europe is not stopping this. Almost willingly, they're not stopping this. Do you think that's 30 seconds. We got 30 seconds. Paralysis?
Yeah. Well, the brain drain for Africa is going to be very severe and terrible for the continent if people, once they have the means to try to make that journey to Europe, take off. And of course, Africa is the one place in the world where the demography is exploding, and we're going to have to be dealing with African migration and the politics of Africa in the decades ahead. You know, America, I think, has an edge over Europe in a lot of these problems, and Europe is going to have to get serious.
Africa deserves better than we're giving it. Matt Continetti, thank you. Follow him on X at Continetti. Talk to you next Friday.